Hello there, people of the internet. Today, I want to talk about the most universal bullets that we have available to us. And I think that my list here is pretty. I think I got a pretty gosh darn decent list. There's all sorts of different bullets out there that are. There's so many out there that are for like one mainstream cartridge, but there's so many different options with different kinds of bullet sizes, and in terms of what it is that most of us go to, I think that I chose some pretty gosh darn good selections. So first things first, I'm going to give a couple of honorable mentions. The 7mm diameter bullet, I think it's a 284 diameter, that does fit quite a few different cartridges, but those cartridges are not all that mainstream in comparison to some others that I think that we're going to get to here in just a second. Same thing with like 8mm 323. By a huge margin, the only 8mm out there that most people know about is 8mm Mauser. 45 ACP, 44 Magnum. There's all sorts of different things that take like a 4.52 or 4.30 diameter projectile, but by a huge margin, it's people only really pay attention to the 45 ACP or the 44 Magnum. There's like 45 Long Colt and 44 Special and a few other odds and ends, but for the most part, that is one bullet diameter that fits one very popular cartridge. And with the bullets that I chose, I think that this right here is going to be the best way to be able to have a very minor bullet selection, meaning you only have to go out and buy one box of bullets, but you can load for a good variety of different firearms or different calibers, different cartridges, etc., etc. So first things first, I say we start off with the humble 9mm. This right here, it's typically a 315 or a 324 grain projectile. I think it's a 355 diameter bullet. Now, those projectiles are a little bit heavy if you want to load them into something like 380, but it can be done. However, more often than not, people will look at something like this and they'll load it into something like a 357 Magnum or a 38 Special, and even though people tell me all the time, oh, you can't do that, you're gonna blow up your gun, or insert excuse as to why it doesn't work here, I've literally been doing that for years. It works just fine. A 355 diameter projectile going down a 357 diameter bore is a little bit smaller than what the round actually calls for. So you might have ever so slight accuracy issues or ever so slight loss in velocities, but the amount is so insignificant that it does not matter. Personally, I would lean towards the 124 grain projectiles just because of your twist rates and most of your lever actions and most of your revolvers and whatnot. They'd probably have a better chance of stabilizing a 124 grain bullet if they're a 38 357 Magnum as opposed to a 115 grain. For quite a few, I'm sure it still could be done, but you would probably get better results with that 124 grain projectile. So just because you can load it for 9mm and 357/38, which are some of the most popular 35 caliber cartridges out there, I'm sure that there's others out there too, but I think that those are going to be like the most popular, most mainstream ones. You got one bullet type that you can load two different cartridges with, or technically three, I guess, and you can do a lot. You can do a lot with those. You can do a lot with those. You got your 9mm, which you can run in semi-auto handguns and or PCCs, or if you feel like doing the lever action route with the revolver, then you can load these into your 38 357 Magnums. Alright, another universal bullet, and I think that this right here only has one real cartridge loading, but hear me out on this one. Your 55 grain Full Metal Jacket 223 round, or in this particular case, this is a 224 diameter bullet, which is the diameter bullet that your 223 cartridges take, /556. The reason why I say specifically the 55 grain bullet is just because 55 grain will stabilize in every twist rate out there for your AR or for your I don't know, Mini 14, or I don't know, even if you're watching, this will stabilize in your FAMAS or whatever it is going on. Most of your twist rates for your 5.56 are going to be a 1 in 7, 1 in 8, 1 in 9, or 1 in 12 twist, and all of those will stabilize a 55 grain projectile. Not only that, but yes, you can shoot these out of a 22 long rifle. Ask me how I know. Although I would not recommend doing that. You might want to go with like a 40 grain proper projectile for that particular one. They're definitely not made to shoot these, but it can be done. Just like I said, I wouldn't recommend it. But that 55 grain pill will stabilize in literally every 5.56 223 rifle out there, no matter the twist rate, which is why I say it is a good universal bullet. If you're going to go out and get yourself like 62 grain or 77 grain or something like that, then you got to start paying attention to your twist rate. Like if you have 62 grain or 77 grain or something like that, and a 1 in 12 twist, you're going to have loss of accuracy and you're going to have stabilization issues. A lot of people will say, no, 1 in 12 is fine for accuracy testing and whatnot with your 62 grain, but it's not. It definitely loses accuracy with that. So 55 grain, that's definitely a good go-to. It will, like a 1 in 12 twist will stabilize a 62 grain bullet, but not very well. You will lose accuracy. You'll turn a 1 MOA gun into a 4 MOA gun real quick. Alright, up next, I think that you guys can see this one coming. We have a 308 diameter projectile, but this particular 308 diameter projectile is a 130 grain bullet. And the reason why I chose the 130 grain bullet is just because of the twist rates that you normally find with most of your insert 30 caliber rifle here. If we're talking about 308 or 30-06 or 7.62 by 54R or 303 British or 7.5 Swiss or basically any 30 caliber rifle, like 95% of the time they're going to have a 1 in 10 twist. However, there are occasions where you'll find ones that have a 1 in 12 or even a 1 in 14 twist. I have an Oviedo Mauser somewhere in this pile right here that does in fact have a 1 in 14 twist, and my hunting rifle, which is a Russian TOZ-122, which is this thing right here, this also has a 1 in 14 twist. And those 1 in 14 twist barrels just stabilize your lighter bullets better. Now, they'll still run a 150 grain just fine, but they'll stabilize your lighter weight bullets better. And the main reason why I chose the 130 grain is because you can run these particular weights and these particular bullet size not only in basically all of your rifle calibers with a 1 in 10 to 1 in 14 twist barrel, but you can also run them in 7.62 by 39. Although the 7.62 by 39 is like a 311 diameter projectile and you're shooting a 308 through it, so you do have ever so slight smaller bullet going downrange, but again, the difference is so insignificant. Your 7.62 by 39 rifles typically also run a 1 in 10 twist. It should be able to stabilize that quite good. It's a little bit heavier than the usual 123 grain bullet that you would normally find from that cartridge, but it's lightweight enough to be able to reliably function whatever rifle it is that you're shooting it through. If you're running something like a 150 grain bullet, yes, those can be shot through 7.62 by 39 rifles, but they're not optimal at all. You don't really get the velocity that you need to get. They tend to be not all that reliable just because of how the pressure curve inside the cartridge was designed and how the things actually harmonically work with your rifle. It's just not all that great, which is why I said a 130 grain bullet would be your ideal go-to universal 30 caliber round, because it will stabilize in basically everything, unless you're rocking some, I don't know, some 30-06 that's specifically designed to run 250 grain projectiles that has a 1 in 7 twist barrel or whatever it is that you're deciding to go with. Like 99.999% of the time, basically all your 30 caliber rifles will be able to stabilize that. All right. And last but not least, I think that the most universal bullet is going to be one of these. Not necessarily one of these, but a 120 grain 6.5 millimeter projectile. And whenever I say 6.5 millimeter, I mean a 2.64 diameter projectile. And the reason why I say 120 grain is simply because of your Carcano rifles, your Carcano, however that's pronounced. The Carcano, however you call that name, that particular Italian rifle has gain twist rifling. At the end of the barrel, it stabilizes your projectile with a 1 in 8 twist barrel. Like, it starts at, I think, 1 in 36 or 1 in 38 or something like that. And by the time the projectile leaves the barrel, it stabilizes at a 1 in 8 twist, and that can very easily stabilize a good portion of different projectiles. The issue is, a lot of your Carcano rifles out there have been sporterized and cut down, and the barrels have been cut down, and there's carbines out there with things that are cut down. And as a result, way more often than not, instead of that 1 in 8 twist, you'll have something more like a 1 in 12 to a 1 in 15 twist, somewhere in there. And with that style of twist rate, you start to see stabilization happen much better, much more effectively with lighter weight bullets. Kind of like how a 1 in 7 twist for an AR-15 stabilizes heavier bullets, and a 1 in 9 twist stabilizes lighter bullets. A 1 in 8 twist would stabilize heavier bullets in a Carcano, and a 1 in 10, 12, 15 twist would stabilize lighter bullets. So the lighter projectile you have, if you have a cut-down Carcano barrel, the more likely it is to stabilize that projectile, as opposed to your more traditional 160 grain bullets that you might run through that thing. So if you have a cut-down Carcano, this right here would most likely work in it. If not, you can get lighter weight projectiles in that, but I think that this right here is a pretty gosh darn good option. On top of that, 2.64 diameter projectile through a 2.68 bore. I get it, it's a little bit smaller, you're going to lose a little bit of accuracy, but it can still be fired pretty gosh darn effectively. You got the 6.5 Carcano, you got the 6.5 Creedmoor, 6.5 Jap, 6.5 Swede. There's a whole bunch of different 6.5 caliber options out there for you. As a matter of fact, I think besides my 30 caliber rifles, my next most predominant rifle that I own is going to be my 6.5s. If we're talking about differences in cartridges, I think the most popular is going to be 30 caliber. Second most popular is going to be 6.5. And then I got a bunch of 8mm Mausers and 7mm Mausers, and by a pretty huge margin, I don't have anything else that takes that 8mm or 7mm diameter projectile. I got a 270, which takes a 277 diameter bullet, but again, that's like, as far as mainstream cartridges go, that's like the only mainstream cartridge that takes that particular projectile. Versus like the ones I've shown, where this 2.64 diameter projectile I could load in like a half dozen different rifles, or the 5.56 55 grain, all of your 5.56 rifles can fire this bullet, or my 9mm, which can be shoved into 3 different kinds of cartridges, or my 130 grain bullet, which can be shoved in a massive variety of different rifles with different cartridges and different uses, different needs, different twist rates. Like the options for this particular one really are limitless. So there we go. I've said my 2 cents on the subject. Thanks for watching. I appreciate your time. Like, subscribe, share. Description below is a link to all sorts of stuff. Go check it out. You guys go off. Have yourself a fantastic day. I'll see you on the next episode. Been a little while since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. Poor man's Garrett. It's a shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.